So why have ministers refused to establish a dedicated unit in the National Crime Agency to investigate councillors and officials accused of collusion and corruption? The ringleader of the Rochdale gang, Shabir Ahmed, was employed as a welfare rights officer by Oldham Council. And yet not one person, not one, has been convicted for covering up these institutionalised rapes.
When they raped her, they used a red ball in her mouth to keep her quiet. These aren't words from a horror film. They're the real experiences of a 13-year-old British girl, as described by Judge Peter Rook during sentencing for one of the country's most horrific abuse cases. Conservative MP Katy Lamb just stood in Parliament and demanded answers about why the Labour government has failed to properly investigate these rape gangs. With at least 45 towns affected and thousands of victims still without justice. This scandal goes far beyond politics. It's about a systematic failure to protect children based on who they are and who their abusers were. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video.
Over 3 months since the government announced these local inquiries, Tom Crowther KC, a barrister invited by the Home Office to help establish them, knows almost nothing about their progress, and neither do we. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for advance sight of her statement. In January, the Home Secretary said the government would conduct 5 local inquiries into the gangs which have terrorised so many innocent children.
What does it say about our country when a young girl can repeatedly beg authorities for help, only to be handed over like property to her abuser? The Bradford case stands as one of the most disturbing examples of institutional betrayal imaginable. A 14-year-old girl in residential care, already vulnerable and under the supposed protection of the state, reported her abuse repeatedly to social workers. The response? Complete inaction. Then, at just 15 years old, this child was married to her abuser in a traditional Islamic ceremony. But here's the truly stomach-turning part. Her social worker, the very person tasked with protecting her, actually attended the wedding, effectively sanctioning this abuse. As if this weren't horrific enough, authorities then arranged for the girl to be fostered by her abuser's parents.
And what does the government intend to do about local leaders who say there is no need for an independent inquiry, like in Bradford or in Wales? The girls we are talking about, Mr. Speaker, are predominantly white. Why is the framework for local inquiries now being led by ministers rather than by independent voices such as Tom Crowther? Why is the £5 million set aside for inquiries no longer being allocated but instead delivered on an opt-in basis?
Completing the betrayal by delivering her directly into the hands of those who would enable her continued exploitation. This isn't an isolated incident of negligence. It represents something far more sinister, a pattern of authorities not merely failing to act, but actively facilitating abuse. In Rotherham, when a desperate father attempted to rescue his daughter from her abusers, South Yorkshire police arrested him, twice in a single night. Meanwhile, his daughter remained in the clutches of her abusers, subjected to horrific assaults by multiple men. Let that sink in. A parent trying to protect his child was treated as the criminal, while the actual predators operated with apparent immunity. The impunity these abusers enjoyed is perhaps best captured by Judge Marston's statement in Kirklees. You were seen with your victim on at least 3 occasions by the police. None of that deterred you, and you continued. This wasn't happening in shadows or back alleys. Perpetrators paraded their victims in plain sight, seemingly confident that no serious consequences would follow. How is this possible in a modern democracy? The answer points to something beyond mere incompetence. Katy Lamb's parliamentary speech cut through years of obfuscation by directly addressing dimensions of this scandal that officials have long danced around. She explicitly noted that the victims were predominantly white girls, while the perpetrators were predominantly Muslim men of Pakistani heritage. Her question, how can a proper inquiry ignore these factors, strikes at the heart of the matter. For too long, authorities appeared paralysed by fears of being labelled racist, prioritising misguided notions of community cohesion over the safety of children. The government's approach to addressing these horrors remains woefully inadequate. Lamb pointed out that While 5 local inquiries into rape gang cases were announced, even a barrister invited by the Home Office to help establish them knows almost nothing about their progress. Why are ministers, rather than independent investigators, now leading the framework for these inquiries? The political fingerprints on this process raise serious questions about the government's commitment to uncovering the full truth. Equally concerning is the funding structure. Lamb noted that the £5 million initially set aside for inquiries is no longer being allocated directly, but delivered on an opt-in basis. This creates a perverse incentive structure, where areas with the most entrenched problems and resistant leadership can simply decline participation. As Lamb pointedly asked, what about places like Bradford or Wales, where local leaders claim no independent inquiry is needed? Are we simply allowing those most resistant to scrutiny to escape it entirely? This isn't just about historical failures. The current Labour government's approach suggests a continuation of the same problematic patterns that allowed these abuses to flourish for decades. Lamb's speech represents the first time a sitting MP has directly accused the current administration of perpetuating the cover-up rather than merely inheriting a complicated situation. This crosses traditional political boundaries. Conservative, Labour, and Liberal Democrat-led councils all presided over areas where these crimes occurred unchecked. What we're witnessing is a fundamental breakdown in the social contract. The state's primary obligation is to protect its citizens, especially the most vulnerable. Yet across dozens of towns and cities, authorities consistently prioritised other concerns, political sensitivities, community relations, or simply administrative convenience, over the safety of children being systematically abused. The scale is staggering. We're not talking about a few isolated cases, but thousands of victims across at least 45 towns. Many survivors still walk the same streets as their abusers, having never received justice or even acknowledgement of what happened to them. Some have taken their own lives, unable to bear the weight of both the abuse and the institutional betrayal that followed it. Katy Lamb's parliamentary address marks a watershed moment in British politics. For the first time, a sitting MP has directly confronted the current Labour government, accusing them not just of inheriting a problem, but actively perpetuating a pattern of cover-ups and collusion. This goes beyond partisan politics. The fundamental social contract between government and citizens has been shattered. When children were brutalised, those sworn to protect them chose political expediency instead. Lamb's demand for a comprehensive national inquiry isn't merely retrospective, it's preventative. The question now hangs over Labour like the sword of Damocles. Will they finally confront this national shame, or continue the decades-long tradition of denial that has compounded victims' suffering?